Welcome to the Bank Marketing Show, the podcast that engages and informs you for success in today's marketplace. It's the show that will make you a better marketer with trends, tactics, and inspiration from experts and industry leaders. If you're wanting to impact your personal success and position your bank as the best choice in your market, you're in the right place. Now let's dive into today's show with your hosts, Chris and Dan.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Bank Marketing Show. We're glad to have you with us for another really great episode today. This one will have a little bit different spin for us because we're even going to have some screen share and all of that. So if you're listening in, fear not, because we will cover the bases and deliver some great value to you today. So, Dan, welcome.
Thank you. Hello.
Yeah, and welcome to you, Ben. Really excited about having you with us today. And Dan is the other half of the hosting team here, so I'll hand it off to you, Dan.
Yeah, well, today we've got Ben Udell on the show. I saw Ben give a really cool talk on Gen AI back in the Financial Brand Forum earlier this year. And he's out. I know you're out on the road on the circuit a bunch talking about this stuff, but Ben is SVP of Digital Innovation at Lakebridge Bank. He's been around the space a while. You were just named a rising star from BankBeat. So I've seen a lot about you in the news, and you kind of you have a system down for using ChatGPT within your bank, and you're helping other banks also get more use out of it. And that was a hot topic at the forum and in the industry overall. So, interested to get into it with a little bit more with you. But first, let's say welcome.
Great, thanks, guys. I'm happy to be here, and it's obviously a super hot topic. And I think what we'll touch on today is my niche is very much the kind of the everyday AI for everyone. It's very much the how do you apply it? How do you take something from this podcast and start using it immediately versus, all the big picture, shoot for the moon type of conversations that's happening with AI right now. So I'm happy to share. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. And like Chris, like you said, if you're listening to this, I think there's still a lot of value in it. But if you find this episode on our YouTube channel, you can see all the great stuff and see this stuff working in action. So definitely check it out over there.
Well, and also stick around for the end of the episode as well, and we'll give you guys access to Ben's presentation deck and all of that. So great stuff.
Yeah. Well, so Ben, let's start with kind of tell us how you got interested in. I mean, as a marketer in the bank world, like Gen AI, ChatGPT is everywhere. But kind of tell us a little bit more about your role, what you do, and how you got to be an expert in this stuff.
Yeah. So I've been in financial services for over 25 years. And I've been with really the consumer side of the world for most of that. And the kind of the origin story for AI with me was about a year and a half ago. I was going through a merger. And so part of my role was to spin off from the consumer side of the world into digital. That's, consumer is so digital these days that, you basically are getting immersed in it either way if you're running that side of the department or the business. And so I was going off into the innovation side of the world. And the funny thing is when you're going through a merger, nobody has any time for anything innovative, right? You're putting out fires, you're making, the decisions to get the two banks brought together, you're, working on product stuff. And you reach this time period where people just don't want to talk about anything innovative at all. And so the funny thing about that was the time when ChatGPT had basically just come out and it was growing like wildfire and everybody's all over it. And so it was just like this perfect time where I kind of had, I don't want to say free time, but I had this time and energy I could devote to it and get engaged in it. And I think our bank saw the value of it. And so my leadership team is just like, sounds great, be smart and get after it. And so while, most people in the community bank space are they're busy running their area, their department, their team, whatever, there wasn't necessarily a lot for me to do because we're going through a merger and that wasn't, a big part of my daily role. So one thing led to another and I just kept growing it and building it. And all of a sudden I'm doing podcasts and talking about all the cool things that we're doing with AI. So that's the short version. The other thing I get involved in my day is very much the kind of the digital innovation of automation, tech solutions, a little bit of machine learning I'm starting to get involved into. And it's really where IT and tech meets digital, meets the client experience, meets data and analytics. And how does that get packaged together? Everybody's kind of in their silo, and I get to play in the middle ground of all that. So that's the somewhat short version on kind of my role and how I got really deep in the Gen AI space and trying to apply it. So.
Well, and then Dan and I work with so many community bankers across the country as well. We know that community bankers love to have a test pilot like you. You're kind of one of those crazy Navy test pilots to just go and do it, and hopefully it won't crash. And if you don't crash, please teach us everything that you learned while you're out there. So yeah, I think that's where you are, Ben. You've survived. So now bringing some great Gen AI in.
Yeah, it's. I feel like half of my presentations are just dispelling myths and reminding people we already do a lot of this. It just AI is the complement to it, and they're like, okay, that makes better sense now. That's a good idea. So,
yeah. Well, I know. Kind of let you get into it a bit here. I know. One of the ways you kind of like to set this up is talk more about kind of regulation, trust, those types of things, kind of what ChatGPT is and isn't. So love to hear your take there. And
let me get into a handful of topics. I know you guys will jump in with follow-up questions. Just some real basics right now. What I think is really hard for people is understanding you need to treat generative AI like a person. And so when I go out and I train people and I do a little consulting and coaching on this topic, I'm like, talk to it like an intern. And that's not maybe the best way to think about ChatGPT because it's so smart. But if you treat it like a person, you use natural language, you're specific with what you want, that's when this magic really starts to happen with AI solutions. And one of the ladies who works for me, she would be working in it and she'd come to me and she's like, Ben, the output was really great, but I really needed to create some bullet points for me. And I needed to really have a better focus on features and benefits. And if I could put it into a table, that would be great. If it would do that for me, it'd be great. And I'm like, Julie, just ask it to do that. And she would ask it to do that. And lo and behold, it would start to change its output to meet what her needs were. It's just like going to this intern, right? Where they need a lot of direction and guidance, but they're super smart and they're really eager to help. And you give it to them, and that's what makes this magic happen. I think that's one of these key concepts I like to talk about with people is they try one prompt or a couple of prompts and it doesn't get them anywhere. And they really need to think about it like interacting with a person. So, a couple other things that I want to highlight too before we get into some of the regulatory side is people are worried about bias in AI. And what I'm finding in the financial world is it's powered by everything that's on the internet. And the internet, frankly, is filled with really great information from all of the banks and credit unions and financial providers out there. I don't think there's a lot of bias in our world. What I think is happening is that there's maybe some micro bias or areas where maybe you just want to present stuff better. The fact-checking one is always a really weird one to me because people are like, oh, it got facts wrong and it cited weird sources. And I'm like, okay, then ask it for a different source. Ask it to cite sources so you can actually follow the links, right? That's this little mini roadblock that with a couple extra prompts, you could get really great information, or maybe more importantly, you will understand the source and cite it correctly. And you know that it's factual because it's leading you to where you want to go.
Well, and all that too, incidentally, is, that seems like an extension from the, treat it like an intern advice, right? It's if somebody gave you a project and you're like, well, this is great, but where did this information come from? You'd go back to them and say, well, where did this information come from? Tell me your sources. And you can do that here too.
Or they might have a really great concept and the source is not great. So ask AI for sources that fit this description. And if it exists, then it gives you the sources. So, the original source, the idea of the source was great in the concept. Ask and see if you can find some resources that support that. So totally. The other one that gets really crazy, I think, at times is this whole privacy concern. And I would not dismiss that at all. But the reality is, we're trusted with private data all the time. And we're trusted not to upload it into Google and send it off by email outside of the bank. And we're trusted not to print it. It's funny where you get these executives and risk managers who say it's too big a risk to have that out there. And my response is, you already have that risk. So with all of the bias of fact checking, the privacy, you already have policies that adjust for that, right? You're going to review your work. You're going to own your work. You're going to fact check. You're not going to do stupid stuff with private PII. Apply AI to that. It's not a standalone AI policy. It's how do you use AI embedded into the current policies that you already have? And I think that's one of these key things when I talk to people, they start having these aha moments of, oh, that makes total sense. And what's funny about that is one of the things I also say is maybe you want to go back to, say, your bank president or CEO or whoever runs your risk to say, you trust me with all this private data. Why don't you trust me with private data in this sense as well? And I'm not going to upload that. It's like, why have you stopped trusting me? And they don't have a good answer for that. They're just scared. And I think that's fine. So, I think that's all important, which leads into some of the hallucination points. And I think that's where I really like to share with people. I think hallucinations really start to happen because they don't understand how to input good prompting information. And so they'll say, tell a story about Ben and Dan and a podcast, and you've given AI no real direction. And so it doesn't hallucinate. It just starts making stuff up because you haven't given it anything and you haven't given it any guidance. Much like if I went to an intern and I said, hey, write a blog about Ben and Dan talking about podcasts, you don't know what you're going to get out of it. But if you go back in and say, act as a marketing director, your objective is to write a blog that takes 5 minutes to read. It's about a podcast on AI. Your tone should be friendly and helpful. Your audience will be financial professionals. I need you to use keywords about generative AI and being helpful, and then format that with a 5-minute blog and include some bullet points in there on key concepts. That output is going to be super targeted to what you want to have. And what's fascinating with that is if you do that, that's going to be a lot shorter than actually going in and writing this blog on your own, right? You're going to get this first draft nearly immediately, and it's going to be really good, right? With these prompts that you have. I think the problem is people try a prompt or a couple prompts and they stop rather than stacking prompts together, as I would call it, and getting deeper into a conversation with an intern about what your needs are and then redirecting them.
Yeah. Or it's like, it's putting the time into that prompt, right? Not, I think in the media, there's so much, right? There's talk of Gen AI is going to save everybody all the time. And, so you go into it thinking, if you haven't used it, you go into it thinking, I'll just be able to throw a prompt in 5 seconds and get what I need, but it's not quite there.
Yeah.
But it's still a lot faster. You just have to put the thought needs to go into the prompt and,
the analogy we like to use is just like you have somebody new on your team, a new intern, it's going to take you 1, 2, 3 months to learn that person's personality and how they operate and what their tics are and their traits are and how you need to provide that person direction. And I think that's a very apt description of how long it takes to learn how to really use ChatGPT, right? You're having a conversation with it every day. The more conversations you have, the more in tune you are with how it operates, just like with a person, you're going to be stronger with getting a ton of value out of it.
That simple direction though of identifying the perspective and it's kind of like, I guess, back to your intern analogy. It's setting expectations. This is how I expect you to interact with others in the office. This is how I expect you to interact with a client. Those types of things. And so by setting those expectations for your requests that are going into the AI, then it's going to operate within those set parameters and not waste its time or yours, so to speak, right?
Absolutely. And like part of it's this word choice too. When we're doing like taking video transcripts and transcribing them into something useful. Originally, when I was doing it, I would say summarize the chat transcript into a usable document I communicate. And it would take, like 30,000 words and break it down into like an executive summary. And I was so frustrated because it wasn't working well. Well, I took a step back and I looked at my prompt, and my prompt was summarize. Well, an executive summary is a great way to summarize a really large document. Instead, I had to go in and say to this, the intern, the ChatGPT, I had to say, I need you to rewrite this chat transcript with all of the details, but in a manner that communicates better to bankers. And it would basically then give me every single detail in there and be really great. But that's back to like the nuance of working with somebody. You had to really think about the language that you're using. And that's really, really important.
Absolutely. But I think the takeaway, Ben, for our listeners and what you've covered thus far is preparation. And I mean, it can be on a sticky note on your desk, but if you I love this checklist that you provided here is what's the perspective, the objective, what tone do you want? And so is it formal? Is it business tone? Is it casual conversation tone? Is it all those things? And who is the audience? What are you trying to speak to? And it decreases your frustration from the results that you're getting just by doing some of these preparation steps, which are actually really quick and easy. And that's interesting. I hadn't really thought about that. But as you said that, the more that I do that is that if I'm asking the intern, asking the AI the same way every time, that I want to write this as the perspective of the CEO of a marketing agency that's speaking to financial professionals, that is, and doing this every time, then it starts to really work the way that I want it to. So
yeah,
love that.
When I do training on this, one of the things we try to do is some extremes. And so I'll use use a tone is a great example, right? Write in a style for a 10th grade reading level. That's very different than write in a reading level of an MBA with a finance degree. And what's interesting is you can start to see how AI shifts the same presentation. Imagine applying that to, say, a home equity, right? In our world, if we're marketing to clients, the financial literacy level for a lot of clients is a 10th grade level. And oh, by the way, AI gets knocked for writing in a very AI tone. Once you start playing around to, say, a 10th grade reading level or a 6th grade reading level, it starts to write in a more casual tone, especially in financial literacy. And if you write it at like a 2nd grade level, it's probably going to be patronizing to people, right? It's going to feel inappropriate and childish. But that 10th grade reading level feels like this very great level of comfortableness that communicates well to people that are adults, but they don't have financial literacy. And then we'll do these extremes where we say, write as a marketing director, write as Anthony Bourdain, write as an 1860s gold miner. And you can talk about and sell home equities in all of those voices. But the point is, as you think about how you learn how AI works for your needs, those create these extremes to really appreciate how quickly you can kind of turn around and create copy and different types of output with literally just changing the direction you want to use, the tone, the audience, the objective, et cetera. So it's wild. And when you see it in person, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. I know we're going to get to some, maybe not the extremes, but some of the kind of the demos of it actually working here in a minute. But I know you mentioned regulatory stuff, and that's another huge topic on people's minds. Like, I think some banks are waiting for the regulations to kind of come down, or there to be a little bit more control over it before it to make it a little less risky for the banks to use it. But what's your take on that?
Let me give you some perspective. I'm right now I'm on the American Bankers Association, the ABA AI working group. And one of the things we're working through is a Treasury request for information. And so I think that was really interesting to read through the document, because I think you start to see how the regulatory agencies are thinking through a lot of this. And by the way, big disclaimer here, right? We're barely in spring training for the real impact of AI. So, be thoughtful about this on your own. But I think we're seeing two different versions, because under the AI heading, you also have robotic process automation, RPA. You have machine learning, and then you have generative AI. I mean, generally speaking, how banks are going to apply it. So if you think about what we've been talking about, if I'm writing content that's going to be marketing content I'm sending to clients, humans are very much in the loop. And I think what you want to be sharing and expressing to an examiner or an auditor is that whether it's written by an intern or written by AI, the process is probably not changing. A subject matter expert is going to review that home equity content. They're going to make sure it's factual. The marketing director or somebody in that group is going to review it to make sure it fits the brand and you're looking for bias, facts. It's probably going through compliance, which is doing a double check on all of that. So again, whether it's intern written or AI written or written by somebody else, you have a process you're already following. And I think that's what you really want to reinforce with regulators and examiners and auditors, that the process isn't that different, right? There's a human in the loop that's double checking that and taking ownership of the information before it actually goes out. And then if you think about what's happening, maybe you're writing stuff internally, you policies, procedures, you're doing skill development, et cetera. That's probably also figuring out where this human in the loop. I do think if you're going to roll out a program, though, I'm casually starting to hear that people are getting pushback that they're not providing training. They're basically just saying, go for it and use AI. And so, for instance, what we're doing, when you're officially allowed to use AI, I basically run people through a 2-hour training that talks about a lot of what we're talking about here in those pieces, right? So in many ways, this section of AI feels very much like it's complementary to what you're doing. You already have policies, procedures in place, and all of your AI work is basically being reviewed before it's going out, so you know the quality and the appropriateness is there. Which
right. The AI tool is not posting your blog on the bank's website directly.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Yeah. AI is never that last step, right?
Right.
So then the other item where I think people are starting, where I think the regulatory environment is probably going to start getting freakier, for lack of a better word, is when AI is making decisioning, right? And so if you walk through it in an RPA process, you can basically set up that whole chain of events, and you set it up because it's already a process, and you can monitor it and you can audit it. And you have the term that I think is becoming important is explainability. The RPA process is very explainable because it's programmed and it's doing exactly what you want. The next level then is the machine learning side. And that starts to get a little bit more of a black box. But if you start playing around with machine learning, you will still be able to see the inputs that are going in and the outputs coming out. And there's often some statistical modeling around that as well. So you have some explainability, you have some auditing opportunity, right? I think the area that starts to get uncomfortable is if you have, say, a ChatGPT bot that is responding to clients and making decisions because there's no real audit trail there. It's this black box. And so I think you're going to have to be really thoughtful about if it's making decisions for the client, what are those decisions? Are they making rate decisions, approval decisions? And I don't think we're certainly not there yet. I don't think most people are there yet. But I think as we start creeping into that area, I think that becomes this real concern, because if somebody says, I was given a rate and I think it's a disparate lending issue, show me the facts. You're not going to be able to do that with a Gen AI. With a machine learning, with an RPA, you're going to be able to do that, and you're going to be able to validate that. So I think right now, like, we're starting to look at having a chat bot on our website that's connected to ChatGPT, but it's only trained on our website. And if you ask it for rate information, it says, go to our rate page. If you ask it for a recommendation on the right product, it's going to say, talk to a banker. And so we're programming it to stay away from providing financial advice that we can't track down, right? If you want to know how to set up Zelle in your mobile app, it will do that. If you want to know, how do I choose the right checking product, we're going to say, contact a banker. And I think those are some of those pieces where, from a regulatory standpoint, we can slow walk into this and not put ourselves at risk. Because you see all the headlines, right? The headlines are, somebody tricked a car dealership and is selling like a Ford F-150 for $1, or, all this other crazy stuff. And it's like, people don't understand. You got to kind of program it to stay away from doing stuff like that. So I think that's where we're starting to go. And I think if you can separate out the process improvement versus the AI decisioning, and then how that's hitting the client without a human in the loop, that starts to, I think, help people with how they're assessing, auditing, reviewing, iterating, and setting all that up. I think that's going to help keep people safe. But, the reality of all of this, for most, certainly community financials, you can stay on the process improvement side of the world of just using Gen AI to help you with, writing content and communication and skill development, all that. And you're staying away from all that decisioning, which, is probably going to get some people in trouble sooner rather than later because they don't understand it.
Yeah, no, the limits are much easier if you're using this advice, treat it as an intern. It's never the final step, and you're protected from all of that. And I think we have to remember, like, this is all super new.
Mm-hmm.
And, what it looks like in a couple of years, even next year, is going to be way different than what it looks like today. So it'll, I think generally it'll move further along, but banks, offering financial advice through their, banks are not going to be on the ultimate leading edge of that, but we'll catch up. And they shouldn't be because of the regulatory issues, but we'll catch up over time. It's just kind of, the assessment should be not on whether to use ChatGPT or not. It's more of how far should we go? How, where should it flow into the process?
Yeah, Dan, I think that's right on. It's inevitable that AI is going to be a part of what we do. So how do you create a pilot group? How do you create guardrails? How do you start stepping into this environment rather than, because I don't think we're anywhere close to getting like true regulatory guidance. It's probably going to be like everything else, right? Where they're going to provide some guidance. And some people will interpret that as black and white, and they're not going to be comfortable with the gray area. And that's going to be hard. It's going to be hard for people. So, yeah.
Well, I know people are probably excited to start seeing this work and hear I know you've got some really specific, actionable takeaways for the prompts and things like that. So,
yeah, my niche is definitely like the everyday AI for everyone. And so, part of our time today for the listeners was very much about, all right, how can I sit down and actually do something immediately, or potentially go watch the video and then pause the video and do it along the way. So let me give everybody, I think, a really great example that was, I think, the hit at the Financial Brand Forum, and that was how to basically write marketing content. And so effectively, and I'll demo this in a second, is what we're basically doing is we're taking a bunch of our really great examples of marketing, we're uploading it into ChatGPT, and we're basically saying, write me a brand voice so I can write future content with the brand voice. So then you can put more like a very generic version or generic topics in or dictation in that doesn't have a lot of brand to it, and you can let AI start to write that for you. And then you can write GPT. So let's actually see a demo of that. So this is literally the first step. Is what I'm basically doing is the brand voice examples on here is a PDF. There must be 30 different versions of our marketing and our content that I think represents how I want us to talk. And I'm basically saying, act as a bank director, upload the brand voice example, and write a detailed brand voice. And so what you're seeing is, this is real time, by the way. This is now ChatGPT starting to write the brand voice. And so for those that are listening, it's listening core attributes of the brand. It's authenticity and experience. It's inspiring. And there's a couple of sentences after each of those that's explaining that. And then it talks about how we use it in marketing materials and social media and customer service. And what I really like about this is the tone details. We try to be fun, but not silly. We want to try to connect with people on a more realistic standpoint. We want to be advisory, but not bossy, right? We want to be trusted advisors, but nobody wants to be told what to do with their money, right? And so what this has done is it's basically, in a matter of less than a minute, it's created an outline that it can use. And so what you might do and go through with this is you might actually add in, your bank or credit union email. You might add other keywords that you want, right? I wouldn't take this as the final step, but this is the big step. And what you're going to do with this is you're going to go in and you're going to build a GPT. And if you're not sure how to build a GPT, that's going to be in here in a second. But you could take that alone and upload that to a chat and say, write a home equity blog focused on baby boomers who are remodeling. And that's going to give you a blog that's going to be really great.
Already in the brand voice, already trained on your mission, yeah.
Absolutely. And so what I wanted to do here is, people don't always appreciate what goes into the GPT to power that. And so for those that aren't really familiar, or obviously for the listeners, not the viewers, in ChatGPT, you can build these agents, these bots that are more specific on an output that you want to accomplish. So instead of going in and constantly copying and pasting my brand voice in, I can load that into a GPT, and then I don't have to load it in. It's already built in and it knows what I want to do. And so like in a GPT like this, what I'm saying is you're going to help users write marketing content as a marketing director, write with the brand voice that's included, write at a 10th grade reading level. And then there's some direction as to what to do when you actually start it. And so all of this is behind the scenes. So instead of telling it every time, I can drop in what I want it to write, which we'll demo in a little bit. And that's it. And it makes it extremely efficient. So if I want to take that same home equity and I want to change it from baby boomers to millennials to, debt consolidation to home remodel, I can basically just start swapping that out, and it's rewriting new copy for me in basically a matter of seconds in many ways, maybe a matter of a minute or two. And I basically load in like extra descriptions of what I want, my blogs and everything else to look like. So that's a little behind the scenes look at it. But so now this is when it's actually in action. And I would encourage listeners to go to the YouTube channel for you guys to view this. And we'll get you the link as well. But so basically all I'm doing is I'm going into the GPT and I'm saying, write a blog focused on the demographic of upscale empty nesters who are baby boomers. They have clients of ours who do not have a checking account. And I added some extra insight in there as well, how I want this to structure it. And literally it starts writing for me the actual blog. And the blog, I would say, is pretty good. Nobody is going to suggest the blog is the final step. If we go back to what we talked about earlier, you're still going to go in and edit, and you're going to look for your brand, and you're going to double check for facts. But for a lot of people to write a first draft of a blog of this quality, it's going to take them an hour, 2 hours a day, depending upon writing skills and what they want to have. And the interesting thing is, as this writes, because it was focused on baby boomers, it's kicking out information on a retirement nest egg and a dream vacation and looking for grandchildren, like all focused on baby boomers, right? You wouldn't talk like that to millennials, but you'll talk that way to baby boomers, and it becomes very specific. And then if I want to take that and say, I want to promote this to clients, I need to write an email, give me 5 subject lines. It automatically kicks out 5 subject lines, starts to write an email in the brand voice, and it will also embed a location to put a link to the blog as well. So it's basically doing all of this work for me, and I just kind of have to sit back and watch it work. In fact, for those that go online to watch the video, we're generating a blog, an email, internal communication, a training guide to bankers in about 3 minutes and 30 seconds. Which is wild when you consider how long it would take somebody to actually write all of this out, right? Like, just wild at the quality of level that you can do.
It's actually boots on the ground campaign applicators that it's spitting out in a matter of a couple of minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. And you think about this staff, like you could literally have an intern go in and use this, and you could go to the intern and say, I just need you to write all this content with ChatGPT, and the content I want for baby boomers on this, millennials on this, write a long format blog, a short format blog, put a training guide together, and they're going to be able to generate this basically immediately and start to edit, right? You don't need an intern that knows a lot about this stuff if they can just basically take the basics for you and start creating all of this stuff. So it's just, obviously really, really wild with all of that. And, the interesting thing is what marketers, I think, struggle with in community financials is I create this marketing, the bankers need training, and we don't have a training team for that. Or now I have to go explain all of this to branch managers or bankers. You can basically have ChatGPT write for you a training program, a multiple choice quiz, role play scenarios, a training guide that the manager would use in the branch. And so now you've got this consistency across your campaign as well, which is really, it's not so much it's hard to do, it just takes a ton of time, right? And we can knock this out in like 5 minutes now. And The other thing that's, I think, really important for people to appreciate with this is you could do this for 16-year-old tellers who are interns. You could do it for 30-year-old bankers who have some experience, or you could go in and do this for 55-year-old business bankers, right? You can do all of this in a matter of minutes to different internal demographics, and that just strengthens your communication and your ability to communicate with clients at the end of the day. So it's just wild to think about, right? And how quickly you can write content. And oh, by the way, imagine if you're an executive or somebody that needs to write a lot of content, you could basically have GPT read all of what you write. So it creates your personal brand voice. And then your personal brand voice, you can just start kicking out information a lot quicker. In fact, I was at lunch yesterday and we were talking about how to demo this to get some people bought into it, which would either get them bought in or maybe scare the heck out of them, is imagine taking like your executive in charge of approving this, taking a ton of their emails, asking it to write a brand voice. And then if you know what, say, their DISC score is, their personality profile, you could basically start writing content under their name with their personality profile. And I bet you it's going to be really good, right? You probably don't actually need the DISC profile, the Myers-Briggs, et cetera, but it's this like extra added piece that might give it a little bit more kick to the writing, shall we say? Or, so-and-so needs to be more assertive, or so-and-so needs to take a softer touch. Within that style, how do you do that? And I bet you, some of these people are going to be weirded out by it, and others are going to absolutely love the fact that they've just saved an ungodly amount of time because they're using ChatGPT to write for them. It's in their voice, and they're going to fact check it and edit it anyway. So, just crazy to think about the time savings from stuff like this, right?
Yeah, especially, I mean, if you invest that, and if you invest the time in training it on the brand, and you've got the GPT set up that you can keep going back to, the rest of it just flows even faster than you probably think.
Yeah.
And it can take some time to collect all that background information and get it in there, but then you're just cranking stuff out.
Yeah. Let me show you guys some of that dictation stuff, or I guess I'll talk about it for those that are listening and not watching. So one of the things that I think is really great is you can basically dictate something into, basically what I do is Word, because I might work on it throughout the day, or what I'll do is when I write my blogs for my website, is I'll go for a walk at the end of the day, and as I'm walking, I'll dictate into my phone what I want to have for my blog, and then I'll go into ChatGPT and write it for me. And what people don't appreciate is that in Microsoft Word, there is a dictation function in the home settings. So you could literally sit at your desk, and instead of typing something out, you can hit dictation and it will just record everything you're saying and then roll it into ChatGPT, which for probably most people, that's a much faster way to generate an email, a document, a policy, or procedure than it is in typing away. You can go into Teams and a lot of Zoom, and you can record and transcribe. And so what we'll do is we might be having a brainstorming session and say, oh, geez, that's a really good idea. Let's record that. We'll just record our session on our brainstorm or our to-dos or our next steps or our meeting. And then we'll ask AI to basically write a game plan, write a meeting minutes, write a summary of to-dos, and it will start kicking all of that out for you. Or for those of you, most of these banks and credit unions that are listening, you probably have Microsoft Stream. Stream will automatically create transcripts of videos. So whether you create the video or you download the video, it'll create a transcript. So like one use case we had is we downloaded 5 hours of video from Fiserv with total transcript word count of 35,000 words. And that became like our knowledge engine to generate training, learnings, information, communication on the new online mobile system that's coming out later this year, right? So instead of having somebody listen to and transcribe or take notes of 5 hours of videos, we did it that way. Now, for that factual piece, you still want to have somebody watch the videos, right? But now they can focus in on what the video is saying rather than taking notes. And then when ChatGPT generates output, that's how they're fact checking that. They watch the video, and that's literally saving days and days of productivity from people who, need to go back through and watch all that. And so this is just like for anybody who's listening and says, I am really busy and I don't have time to do stuff. this is probably the single biggest benefit of listening to this call is you can just dictate it out, let ChatGPT rewrite stuff for you, and it's amazing. And so let me actually show you guys what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I'd love to see this.
So basically, what's on the screen for those that are listening is it is a long rambling paragraph that I dictated. There's no punctuation, there's no direction. It's literally just one giant long sentence that must be, I don't know, 100 words. And I uploaded it into AI and I basically said, take this dictation and rewrite it for me in a manner that I can communicate. And so literally the video I showed is 23 seconds long, and half of that is just like copying and pasting stuff in and working, but it just does it automatically, right? It's amazing. And then if you dictate into AI, you might want to take that and say, write a script for a presentation, write an executive summary, write key bullet points, put this into minutes, create this into a PowerPoint. So by me dictating out what I want to do, I can now create all these different forms as well. And you can literally do it in a matter of minutes, right? Matter of minutes. In fact, in this case, it was a matter of seconds. It's probably a couple minutes when I want to maybe iterate on it and change some stuff along the way. So when you think about a time saving, especially for anybody listening who does not type fast, or maybe they can type fast, but then they have to go in, they have to organize it, they have to improve the grammar, they have to improve the consistency, they have to do all these steps. This is a game changer for people, right? When you think about your personal productivity.
Well, and I think about managers and leaders who maybe are wanting to do a training, right? And be able to convey that training, information and materials in different ways, and I can be riding down the road and dictating this, bring it back, utilize this process and ask it to be in whatever format that I want that to be, even content for a presentation deck that I can come back and add graphics to, and I just cut my time in way less than half, putting together an entire training program around XYZ for my team.
Yeah. And what's fascinating about this is maybe you got to dictate a message out that needs to be more strongly worded, or it needs to be softer, or it needs to be written for a different age group or a different experience level. You can literally just have ChatGPT give you those 4 options in a matter of a minute. And then you can kind of either, maybe you're going to send those out differently, right? Same content, just different tone, different audience. Or maybe you need to dial up or dial down your intensity. Maybe you need to dial up or dial down your presentation. A lot of us do financial literacy into high schools and middle schools, and maybe even younger at times. Imagine taking what we would typically write as experienced bankers and say, rewrite this for 6th graders, right? Rewrite this for a room full of financial executives or industry leaders in your marketplace. And you can just dictate it out and automatically start changing all of that. Wild. Right? Just wild. So
yeah, this is great. Well, I know you're also going to talk a little about kind of generating content from research, from, I guess it's a similar tactic of kind of assimilating a bunch of information down to save some time. But tell us more about that.
Yeah, let me jump ahead to that. What people don't fully realize is that with the paid version of ChatGPT and some of the others, and that might be free for people now too, is you could do a couple of things. You can either link websites. The website linking works fairly well, but there's certainly either some websites like LinkedIn where you cannot screen scrape, or what you have to be on the lookout for is if you bring up, say, a PDF into a Chrome browser, it'll give a Chrome extension on the front end. So it displays as a PDF. You have to look for the actual link. But you can literally, in a lot of cases, link directly to a website, or you can upload an entire file. So let's say back to the marketing side of the world, Bankrate just put out a whole big article and data on savings rates. And you could basically take that PDF or that article, upload it, and then you can basically say, distill for me the key opportunities to help clients save? And it's going to start kicking all this information out to you. And you might say, how can I apply this to bank or credit union marketing? What are campaign ideas that I could have? How would I write this differently for boomers or for millennials? Back to some of the things that we talked through, right? And so you can literally take PDFs that are hundreds and hundreds of pages long, upload them, and start distilling out information that's relevant. Another great example of this in our space is think about the long regulatory compliance documents that we get, right? The FDIC will send out these PDFs that are an ungodly number of pages long, and it's all really great information.
Man, I had to read through one a couple of days ago, and it almost killed me, Ben. Yeah.
It's crazy, right? And it's hard to read. So imagine Chris going in and taking that PDF and basically saying, give me the executive summary of this document. What are key changes? What are areas that the FDIC is highlighting I should look at? What are specific areas that would be relevant to a community financial? I'm not suggesting you're going to not read the document, but for a lot of these documents, especially for experienced people, you don't need to read the document line for line. You need to get the gist of it. You need the executive summary. And so then you can see that executive summary, and then maybe that will spark some areas where now you need to jump into those specific areas and look at it even more. So like great time saver, right? Or it might be like, I think of some of the stuff we need to read. Technology is a great space right now where I'll use a good example of APIs and webhooks that are important in the technology scene, but a lot of community bankers don't appreciate. It's an article on the risks of APIs and webhooks. It's like, great, explain to me the difference between an API and a webhook. How would that apply to financials? What are some risks that are associated with that? Explain it to me like I'm a sixth grader. Give me analogies. And so you could take this big document of a topic maybe you need to learn, and you're going to basically use AI as a tutor or a consultant for you to learn all of that, right? And you can learn at your pace and your needs rather than, having to go through this document. So it's really awesome tool. The other thing is from a marketing standpoint, to bring it back to like your guys' world, you might have one long prompt that doesn't talk about a product at all. But then what we'll do is we'll say, review this website to create the content. So my long prompt is probably like write the blog, focused on blah, 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 all the prompts we talked about. The link goes to a page on our website that's for mobile deposit, credit savvy, Money Sense, Zelle, whatever it is. And all I'm doing is swapping one line that is a website, and it's writing content for me in a consistent manner over and over again, right? So talk about this time savings. Like I really got to promote all of my digital products, right? Because there's loyalty built into that. There's a use case built into it. The banker credit union is paying for it. Now you can create this campaign, this email campaign, by just swapping out one line item, and it's going to start writing everything you need. Really productive, really productive.
I think I know a big takeaway you have is using templates, but you're kind of hinting at that too, of like, how do you, it's already super fast, but how do you reduce some of the pain and make things even faster and smoother? But yeah, let's see this live. And
yeah, we can touch on it in a sec. Let me show you guys like what this looks like. So here's an ABA banking journal from the spring. It's basically this kind of spring journal they put out. Review the PDF and give me an executive summary about hidden fees in banking. So for those that are listening, it's literally just the ABA Spring Journal, and I uploaded and I said, that's what I asked for. And what it's doing is it's basically giving me a lot of key points that are in the journal, and it's giving me a paragraph to review. So now I could take this and I could certainly ask for more information. I could generate marketing off of it. I could ask to maybe jump away from the journal because it hit on a topic, say that I always get the number wrong, the 1033 rule, right? That everybody's working on. Or what I might do is I might say, you know what, I know that hidden fees are a big deal and the ABA is talking about it. We don't have hidden fees. I want to write a message to my clients to promote that our products don't have hidden fees. And so I'm taking literally research and information from the ABA journal and starting to create content from that. And that's a marketing example. But I might push a little deeper into certainly the side of the house of new regulatory issues and everything else. I mean, it's pretty it's really easy to take that journal, which I believe the journal is probably like 40 pages long, something like that. And if I'm not an avid reader of it, I can just distill out the high points and then dig in a little deeper from what I want, right?
Well, and I'm thinking too here of, big news story. I mean, like the Silicon Valley Bank, fallout last year, and people had to spin out marketing campaigns really quickly of, hey, here's a PDF of, what FDIC insurance is, distill this down. Why clients shouldn't be worried. That, here's some news articles, talk about why we're strong. Like, there's a lot of day-to-day examples from that of just, speeding that process up.
And I think, Dan, that's a great example, because part of, I think, what we struggled with is what's the right tone you want to take with clients, right? You want to be educational, helpful, confident, and it can be difficult to write in that tone sometimes, right? How do you want to capture the essence of it? So you could basically go in and say, write me 5 different versions of an email on this topic. Your goal is to be confident. Your goal in the second one is to be trustworthy. Your goal in the third is to be, whatever you want. And now you have these 5 versions that you can generate instantly. And it's really helpful. You probably won't take one of those 5. You might take a couple of them and distill those into a better solution. But you have all these creative ways to really dive in and create content much faster. It's pretty wild.
I don't know. I like your 1860s gold miner example from earlier.
Yeah, if you do that, and I just love Anthony Bourdain. Like, if you have a vibe you want to kick out, you do Anthony Bourdain, and everybody automatically oh, Anthony Bourdain, and they're like, oh, yep, that's his style. And ChatGPT generally is not going to use any profanity either. So it's work related. It's just the more assertive side.
Yeah, I was going to say, what if you throw in a Jeff Spicoli or something like that? That might give it a different twist. So
100%,
for those listeners who I hope you know who that is. So never mind.
It's a good one to look up on ChatGPT and write with, right? Yeah. I think we had one more example we wanted to share, some highlights on what this means. So sometimes when we're doing a lot of big stuff in AI can get confused. Back to that intern example, if you give the intern a ton of direction, he or she can get confused, right? There's just a lot. Anybody would get confused. So there's 2 ways that I think really help solve that. The first is provide steps. You want AI, Gen AI, I want you to write a blog first with these points. I want you to write an email with these points. I want you to do, something and have it follow steps. And the benefit of doing that is it's going to help with the consistency of output because it's following steps. It knows what you want to do and it's trying to give that to you. And the other aspect of that is provide a template as well. So often, if you think about starting to combine all these topics we talked through, if you have, Mary in deposit ops who just wants to do her job and doesn't want to write policies or procedures, but she knows all of them, you could have Mary dictate into Word an entire procedure. Then you can take a template of a procedure that is kind of your brand standard and basically say, take this dictation, apply it to the template so I have consistent output. And that's what it's going to do. And I'll show that to you guys in a second here. But, anytime AI is not giving you good output or consistent output, it usually is helpful to provide some specifics to it. And here's like a really great example, I think, is that there's a health savings document. So for those that are listening, I uploaded a health savings guide, for lack of a better word. And I basically said, here's a bunch of UTMA information for custodial accounts. Use the health savings document as a template, but write about UTMAs. And so what it's doing is it's basically rewriting all of this into a really great direction. In fact, it was really basically a dictation that I uploaded to make this happen. And so what's happening is AI is basically writing out in a very consistent, easy to read format. It talks about information you need to gather. It has steps. It has helpful information about how UTMAs work. And that's all basically driven off of following a template. So we literally just took a dictation of UTMAs with a bunch of just random information about UTMAs and said, apply it to this template. And it just created what I think is a really great first draft of something you could use for bankers, right? I mean, it's pretty crazy to think about, all the stuff that's in our heads that we just haven't had the time to create. And we could just have AI do that for us now, right? And then you send it back to Mary and be like, hey, Mary, is this correct? Fact check it for me. And she's going to read through it. And it's generally really accurate. It's really awesome. Really great. Whew, man, guys, we covered a bunch of examples. That was a lot.
Yeah, we got through it. Everybody's an expert. Well, I think you compressed. You said you usually do a 2 or 3 hour training, right? So
yeah. This was a jam-packed whirlwind for the listeners. Hopefully, all the listeners are like, "Oh my God, now I got to go in and watch this and review the slides so you can see it live." Right. So it's a good plug for your guys' YouTube channel. That's for sure.
Well, and the good thing about a podcast format too is it's easy to rewind. Wait, what did he say? Oh, okay, yeah. So, yep.
For those listening, you can see all these videos, which gives you the chance to literally pause it and go in and type it in on your own and then modify it a little bit for what your needs are. So I would say if you're going to do it, this is all generated by the paid version of ChatGPT. So if you're using the unpaid version or other versions, you're going to probably get some different content, but that just gives you the chance to kind of play around with it and re-prompt. Because the magic never really happens at the first prompt. It happens with a dialogue with your intern. It happens with a dialogue with with ChatGPT and others. So you got to get 5, 6, 7 prompts deep to dial it in and really get to where you want to go. So yeah,
I think I'm going to take the transcript of this episode and feed it in there and ask it to summarize and write our show notes and email newsletter and see what happens.
It's going to work great. Yeah. And if you use the templates for those as well, it's going to be even better. So
ChatGPT Inception.
Yeah.
Well, I know we've gotten through a lot here, but we can't let you go without getting to our lightning round questions. If you're up for it.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and do that. I'm all prepared. I really like these questions. So yeah.
Yeah, these let everybody get to know you a bit better, even on the tail end of some extremely juicy content here, Ben.
Good.
Yeah. Well, first one, let's share a personal best or business best or both.
Yeah, I love this one. We talked business the entire time, obviously, so I thought I would hit a personal best. My fun fact is I have done 3 Ironmans in my time. So that's the full 14-hour grind of swim, bike, run. And I'm not COVID kind of killed that. Once COVID came around, it kind of pushed me away from doing that. But for a while there, I was doing a bunch of those and other stuff. And people are usually surprised when you say you've done one, and it's like you've done 3 of them. They're like, "Are you crazy?"
You went back for more.
For some reason, yes. Great experience. Would recommend it, but it is a ton of work. A ton of work. So,
well, that's
good for you.
That's impressive. How about a favorite book or other resource?
Yeah, I'd give 2 right now. One's super timely and one I'm just enjoying. It's hard to read one book at a time for me. So for anybody that has never read Split the Difference by Chris Voss, it's all about negotiating skills. And he weaves in his time as an FBI negotiator and then takes those parallels into like everyday negotiating. And it's an awesome book. If you haven't read it, it's a quick, easy read, but there's real practical stuff you can take away from it right away, which I think is why I really liked it. The other one I would plug, I'm reading through right now, is a book called Co-Intelligence by an author by the name of Ethan Malik. Co-intelligence is all about kind of what I've been talking about, the practical side of how do you apply generative AI to your everyday life, your everyday professional life, your everyday personal life. And so I think it's this really great grounded book to help open people's eyes to how do I work alongside AI, hence the co-intelligence side. So those are 2 great books I'm in the middle of right now, and I think they're awesome and would recommend them for everybody.
And Chris Voss's stuff is so great. I've listened to him on several different podcasts and haven't read that yet, so I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, he's good. And it's fascinating just listening to his actual like real life stories of life and death, and it's countered with how to practically apply it. It's a book that's hard to put down. That's for sure.
Yep.
What is the most impactful piece of advice you've gotten?
Yeah, when I was a young guy, I was kind of looking at doing a different job, and one of my mentors, he said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, I don't know. What do you want to be? And he's like, I asked you the question. And we kind of laughed. And the whole point was like, nobody really knows. Like, there's like two people in my life who knew what they wanted to be when they were kids, and they actually happen to be pilots of all things. Besides that, nobody knows. And so I think the great advice that he gave me is nobody really knows. So what is the experience, the knowledge, the opportunities you want to get involved in? And funny things happen when you do that, right? You either try to gain knowledge and it's really hard, and you maybe realize like that's not a talent. Maybe you don't want to do that. Or it's really easy and there's value there. Or opportunities and experiences where it's like you really enjoyed that and you shine, do more of that. Or it was really difficult, do less of that. And so your career is not this linear line. It's this kind of amorphous sphere that evolves over time. And if you keep finding ways to like find experiences and opportunities and knowledge, you're just going to naturally gravitate towards things you enjoy and you're good at. I love that advice, and I followed that for 20 years, and I think it's been awesome. And I think the whole Gen AI experience over the last year has been a great example of that. So yeah, love it.
I mean, who would have known 2-3 years ago that you'd be, or we'd all be in this world of it, and
yeah.
If you're set up to follow the opportunities, you can go for them when they come up.
Yeah.
Well, flip that around. What's something you always tell your team, your coworkers?
I think people really struggle with advocating for themselves, whether it's in a work life, a personal life, something's not working well. So I always like to tell people you only get what you ask for, right? So whether it's career advice, a career step, an opportunity, a promotion, new experiences, you only get what you ask for in life. Rarely, we're usually disappointed because we didn't get something and we never asked for it and nobody knew. So I advocate for yourself, ask for it. And good things absolutely happen when you start to do that, right? Be your own best advocate, and you can do it in an easy, positive, professional manner, and good things will happen.
Great. Well, finally, the softball question of them is, tell us more about, we're going to put a bunch of links in the show notes for all this stuff, but tell us more what you can share, how people get in touch with you, learn about the trainings you do.
Yeah, no surprise. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. So by all means, go to LinkedIn, follow me on LinkedIn, connect with me on LinkedIn. I try to write 2-3 times a month for blogs and whatnot on AI. And then I share the podcasts that I'm on and everything else. So that's a great resource. The other is I run a website called robotsarepeople.net, robotsarepeople.net. And it's very much focused on like the everyday AI, thought leadership, practical examples. And that's led to, if people are looking for hourly consulting on how to just get started and how to get involved, I have been doing that on the side. Full day training besides that here at the bank. I've been going off and frankly taking some PTO, and I go off and do a half day of AI training. And besides that, a lot of speaking, writing, and podcasting. So you can find me doing that. And if you're looking for, somebody to help shepherd you into this space and you liked what you heard so far today, then it's not hard to find me and dive in and do more of that. So I'm here for it. That's for sure.
Awesome. And I know we've got a link to the slide deck we can share out and go back to the YouTube channel. We'll link that out as well, and you can get all this good stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think this will definitely be one of these episodes that we've got a lot of listeners/watchers go over repeatedly. I'm literally going to take several chunks of this and share it with my team, Ben, that are
awesome.
Just really practical application steps and processes for this. So, man, this has been amazing. Really Good. Appreciate it very much.
Happy to hear it. I appreciate the opportunity, Dan and Chris. And, I just hope people can literally take it and literally when they're done or in the middle of it, they can pause it and start working with ChatGPT and finding really great, cool things that are helping them be better at work and in their personal lives. So this is the tip of the iceberg, by the way, too, which is so awesome. I think about where AI is going.
Yeah. Well, and for our listeners too, go to bankmarketingshow.com. That's where you can find this episode, dig in, look at the show notes. We'll have all of Ben's contact information in there as well. And, reach out directly to him. Dan, like you said, we can, or Ben can share the slide deck, and great stuff here.
Right. Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks so much, Ben.
Thanks for joining us. To go deeper or get access to some of the valuable nuggets from today's show, go to bankmarketingshow.com. There you'll find episodes, links to resources, and much more. Be sure to subscribe wherever you find your podcasts. And join us next time.